I'm Somya, and you're listening to Philosopreneur, where we explore the intersection and integration of the philosopher and entrepreneur. Today's guest is Adrian Barra. Adrian studied architecture but ended up dropping out because his ambitions were not aligned with the education system. He then joined an early-stage startup where he spent 3 years learning about building product, raising capital, and managing teams. He has given talks and organized workshops for companies like Chanel, Brilliant Minds, and Sotheby's. He is the founder of Make My Deck, a pitch deck design studio for startups, helping founders from the pre-seed to Series A stage to design and deliver killer pitch decks that close deals and raise money. He has also built a community called The Becoming Self, in which creatives come together and embrace a build-in-public approach to their projects. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, Adrian. Thank you for joining me on the Philosopreneur podcast. So, maybe we can just start. Usually I always start this way. Just, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you are currently based.
Awesome. Now, first of all, like a pleasure to be here. Honestly, we have had so many conversations in the past. So for me, it's a true honor to be here and have like a conversation about things that we actually already talk. And yeah, just to give anyone that is listening a bit of a background, I'm going to try to be short, but short summary, I basically study architecture, which remains a passion of mine. But during the career, the degree, I found out that I had like a true calling for entrepreneurship or business or all this kind of thing. To be honest, at that stage, it was just like a instinct, like a guess to want to try. And I came to an opportunity to join an early stage startup. In fact, like it was only like 3 months old or something like that. So pretty early stage. And without noticing, almost like I ended up spending like over 3 years there or close to 3 years. And it was first like a roller coaster, as all the startups usually are, and also like an amazing learning experience overall. But yeah, in December, last December, I decided to exit the startup and just try on my own, and yeah, figure it out what it's going to be all about. And I started to spend a lot of time in what used to be Twitter, now it's X. so so I started connecting with a lot of people, yourself included, and just getting like an first impact into the potential of the community, which I'm sure that we are going to talk more about. And also like I start to define how it was going to be my next step in the entrepreneurial space, but maybe with a different approach, that it wasn't either like starting my own startup, neither like joining another startup, because to be completely honest, the early stage is quite exciting, but at the same time exhausting, so I didn't feel like I had the energy to give it a go for another 3 years. So probably we can talk about how I test different concepts or different structures and how I end up doing what I do nowadays.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, you've really been quite deeply involved in the venture community. I know just before I'm going to ask you about your Becoming Self community as well as Make My Deck. And just prior to that, you were in a venture studio. So, um, I'd like to know what from that experience, working with entrepreneurs has um, shaped your attitude to entrepreneurship.
So I guess that from a very young age, I always had like an inner interest for like early stage projects, because basically I like it to start things, but quite honestly, at some point I lost the interest on it, So at the beginning, I even thought that that was like a self-sabotaging trait, that I've never ended up finishing the things, And use like a lot of like self-development and trying to understand myself and manage, and a lot of exploration and testing different things, I end up understanding where I thrive and where I don't, and I also find out, I know that you also appreciate a lot like human psychology and anthropology and everything. Get to this concept, which to me was like pretty liberating, which was like we as humans like are different, which I know that a lot of people know that, but at the same time, like we don't understand how different we are, and we have evolved into thrive in different stages during the day and during the life and during everything, just so we can compensate. So to put it in a easy example, is like I used to polarize like there are early birds and there are late owls, and what sometimes like society put a lot of pressure on late owls because like the whole narrative or the whole meta is like just wake up early and just like if not you are lazy or that kind of thing, or staying up late is a waste of time. And it's like um, from an evolutionary standpoint, like we needed to be different in terms of like when we were in tribes, just so some people of the tribe were awake during night or during the early beginning of the morning, from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. Just so there were someone awake in case of any threat or something. So it seems like we have forgot about it, and we have tried to all er, the whole population to fit in a mold. And I have a feeling that nowadays, with more possibilities and more freedom, we are kind of self-discovering and accepting ourselves in the way we are. So long explanations to get to the point that was like I started to accept the fact that I really like it the early stage, and for some reason I resonate a lot with the founders and that energy and that motivation to solve something, to fix a problem in a world that it seems like no one was fixing. But I also had to understand what was my role on this stage or in this mission, because obviously I tried to start a few ventures on my own from early days. I also tried to be part of other ventures like this experience in this startup. I also tried different models like agency, venture studios, until I found kind of like a combination of where it was my experience and my expertise. And in this regards was what nowadays I'm funneling in Make My Deck, just like directly helping founders in the early stage, like pre-seed to Series A, use raising capital by creating the decks. But at the same time, so I'm passionate by the early stage, and I've been there many times, like myself and helping others. That was my motivation of like the community to become itself, because the name was directly to that, like that stage, that phase of transformation where you know that you have to become a different person to get on that mission that you potentially self-impose or just discover to solve a given problem or something in those lines.
Wow, really interesting. I mean, it sounds like you've thought quite deeply about this, and um, it's almost as though it's kind of your philosophy in life. Would you say that there's this process of individuation that you're I guess the word one could use is maybe obsessed with, and that's why the early stage um, uh, part of entrepreneurship is so vital because it's helping us individuate. Would you say like the entrepreneurial um, arena has shaped your philosophy in life? Because I know you mentioned architecture as well, and so I just want to kind of open up that avenue a little bit. What is your philosophy in life?
So I guess like since I was a child, I've been always curious about other people's journey and philosophy and like kind of like their way of life. It wasn't until recently, like a few years ago, that I kind of discovered like reading, because for me, like still to this day, is like use books still have like a major impact in the life of many people, especially entrepreneurs. I guess like majority of people usually like books used to uh, tune out, and just like wander in a story. And there is still some magic in the thing that you are just reading and just decoding those words. You can visualize and imagine like surreal words or things like that. But especially for entrepreneurs, like the major leverage of books is like the wisdom accumulated through life or through experience of like different peoples are inserted like in a book, and until we discover something different that we can maybe like put in our head like directly, this is the best way to install a new software, because we can read through the lessons and experience and philosophies of other people and get that experience in a way and reflect, and when you do over and over with different niches and different industries and different like kind of people even or topics, like you start to develop without noticing your own unique perspective, which is touching on what you mentioned. Like I know this has been talked too much, and I honestly don't want to go there, but I feel like the past century has been all about productization in many different aspects, not only from industry, but also in the education industry, So it was almost like there weren't any better other option that productize education and just create a model that everyone has to fit in and just become an specialist on that. But nowadays, I feel like it's pretty obvious that we are going through a paradigm shift where like it's exactly the opposite, because like if there is a technology that can replace you for a special task, you are going to be blown away in a sec. And this is, for example, something that kind of is my philosophy, but also my perspective that we can elaborate more further later. But it's kind of like the same way why I don't really like the word personal brand, and I always talk a lot about building a name. No, because if we think through history, like there has been like only names. It wasn't like Elon Musk is a brand. It's not like that. It's the name, the same way like Da Vinci or like Cristobal Colon or like whatever, or Marie Curie, like those are the names that stuck with us, Um, I feel like nowadays, like in the past century, like brands is a new concept. Honestly, like marketing is pretty recent, and we have tried to impose like the marketing techniques that companies use into the personal into persons, which is kind of stupid in a way. I understand where it's going and I know it helps, but it's just like, for example, like when you have like a company, it's a faceless corporation. The only face we can put if we think like what's a company is like the exercise will be like, okay, it's like a gray building, like a gray tall building. But if we think about it, like what they try to do when you tell the name of a company is like, oh no, it reminds me of this red color and happiness and this the spark of life. And probably most of you have related, oh, Coca-Cola, or differences in that line, because it's necessary for brands. But for us, we are already unique, we are special, and we already have a unique name, So I get that these kind of like celebrity things where artists just create their own name and their own character, but I feel like in real life, what you have to do is just do your self exploration, research a lot through the lives of others in the past, in the current present, and different mediums, and you are without almost noticing and without intending, like form your own like perspective. I guess that in the beginning, like you just adopt the mindset and maybe you read about stoicism and say like I'm a stoic. Okay, but then maybe you read um another channel of like a philosophy or religion, and it's like, okay, I actually like this makes more sense, this doesn't, so I'm going to combine this and that, and you create your own philosophy. So I really like this, the name that your podcast has, and obviously the whole concept that is behind that, because to me, like our whole life, our whole journey of building our name and just like our career building or like journey as a whole is just like developing our own philosophy of life, so
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's really great, and I think this is an area of conversation that I'd love to go deeper into, because I really like that you are promoting this idea of building a name rather than building a brand. And all the points that you brought up were really interesting. I have been thinking about this a lot. It's, we're all, well, most of us who are on X are really trying to build a brand, or, um, you could say, a building a name now. But what is being built, like, behind that name? That's what's so important, because if you're trying to be a coach or a mentor, then sure, build your brand around your name. But if you don't have a product or a service, then what are you building exactly? That's my question. The reason why we know Elon Musk is because he's built great products and services, and that's why he's come to be Elon Musk. It's not that he started out by saying, I'm going to build Elon Musk and then
Yeah.
people will like me. There's something that he did that was not connected to his name. Actually, it was more about his mission for Mars, or electrical cars. Like, that's what we know that he has done, and that's why it's Elon Musk that we have come to love. um so I think it's really important for people to actually, not be so focused on the person, that is being built up online, but rather, what is that person doing? And that's why I really appreciate what you are doing, because you are clearly building a name for yourself, but behind that name is, the Becoming Self community, is Make My Deck. And I think that is so profound, because there's something tangible there, that is behind what Adrian is actually doing. So maybe we can go a little bit into that, and let's start by looking at Becoming Self. Can you just tell our audience a little bit more about the Becoming Self community?
Absolutely. So, just to give a bit of context, as you mentioned, like to me, it feels like what we are actually trying to do, and with the example that you mentioned of Elon Musk, which I know is super recurring, especially nowadays, but it's like if we think of Apple, we know the brand, but behind the brand is Steve Jobs. And even to this day, we keep repeating that over and over. And it's just that drive and mission. And honestly, like even Steve Jobs builds other things besides Apple, but it's kind of like that iconic thing of the person, that mission, as you mentioned. And when someone self-obsessed into something so deeply, it just creates such a character that you just become an icon. And as you mentioned, like Elon Musk, if it was like used for him, like it wasn't the thing. It was like the success over success and failure over failure and story over story and limitless ambition almost. That is like just build the name. The same from I feel like one of the secret of the just becoming iconic is repetition, which is something that we as a society nowadays are becoming super impatient. So just repeating one thing over and over is like something that is not the motto right now. The motto right now, the meta is kind of like how fast can I get to somewhere and how little effort I can do. And I get that we are lazy, we are humans, and that's how we have evolved, like just shortening and finding shortcuts for our path. But this, for example, like we miss that part of the process is just tireless iterations. And this is, for example, something like why Joe Rogan is now has built a name for himself, because how many podcasts did he did? And there are people like in the third podcast that has like 15 views, like it's like that's it, I'm giving up. Next thing. So it's the same for entrepreneurs and it's the same for everything. And just like as I was mentioning previously, I find so fascinating that the stories behind the builders, that the stories behind like the people that are creating things, that I just wanted to surround myself for with more people like this, and also like create a space where they could thrive and connect. Because to me, and this is why nowadays first, like it's not only myself, like the concept of community is becoming more trendy and more people are kind of discovering this model. But to me, it's just because it makes so much sense. we are coming from like what was the internet. The internet was a synonym of like information, like abundant information, and at some point it became like a problem in a sense. Like at the beginning it was crazy, like the amount of information that we could get, like for example even in YouTube videos. But at some point like it becomes like not efficient to look through that, because it's like you imagine you are starting to develop a simple skill like graphic design and learning Figma or Adobe Illustrator, or even website design and learning Webflow or Framer. And the problem you have is like there are like thousands of people creating tutorials, which sometimes it doesn't even have like a chronological order or something like that. So it becomes like difficult to learn. And this is why, like, probably from 10 years ago to 5 years ago, especially 5 years ago, infoproduct became a thing. It became a thing that was pretty powerful because, yeah, it wasn't free most of the times, but at least you had like a proven curriculum, in a step-by-step curriculum that you could get over and often teach out by someone that has worth the talk, you know? So that was the power of like um, digital education or online education that at that stage like just created that friction between traditional education, online education. And just to give a bit perspective, like I myself dropped out of a university just because I felt like, okay, I was trying this and it wasn't the path. So it's like I'm not afraid of like just quitting of things in a sense if it doesn't serve a purpose, because I feel like there are many people like that just have like that sunk cost bias that is like, oh, I already spent this amount of time in this thing, I have to keep going. And previously I mentioned like the power of persisting and iterations, but this is the magic where you have to develop like your instinct, where following a path is going to take you somewhere or it's not going to take you somewhere. And this is how we have evolved, like just investing our energy and time into something, because time is not limitless and it's not given. We don't know how much time we have. So at least we have to enjoy that. And that's, I know that this is a topic that many people talk about, like enjoying the process and everything. But trying to go back to the main point, it's kind of like the main aim of like on info product and online was to have like a structured curriculum, and I started to face like oh, this is way better than traditional education, but we were missing a point that was like usually in traditional education we go through levels and we are surrounded by people that usually are classrooms, and usually there are a limited number of people in that classroom and you are tied together by level. So it's true that in traditional education it's more depending on the age, which is sometimes arbitrary, because sometimes the level could be quite different. So nowadays, like when we started to apply that layer of like group learning into info products, that's when we arrived to communities. And obviously it wasn't like a night and day process, but it started with, okay, so we have an info product that is like someone has an expertise on something, and he or she has recorded like a structured video, for example, or curriculum or something. And it's like, yeah, but we are missing something like support. Where do you go when you have a doubt? So at the beginning, probably it was like just email support or one-on-one calls or something like that. But when the scalability of like info product started to happen, it was like, okay, the creator couldn't spend one-on-one time. So it was like, okay, let's create a group. So let's create a Telegram, let's create a Slack group, a Discord or something where people, if I'm not able to respond quickly, someone else could help. And that was like the reciprocity. And that was the first group, the first kind of communities happened. But at that time, it was like kind of like 80% of it was info product, and it just happens to be that there is like a community there. And now more recently is when we have started to see the shift in this, because it's like, okay, what's the problem with info products? It's like they get outdated, especially nowadays, and it's like information is flowing. So keep teaching something over and over again, and you have to repackage, you have to update it. And it's just like it's a process that takes a lot of time. So in the same way that we criticize a lot that traditional education is not updated and that teachers maybe they don't walk at all and all this kind of thing, it was happening exactly the same to info products. So I felt like it took a few years and a lot of iterations and many creators taking a step by a step like approach to going to where I feel like we are now. That is more like the approach of like not only building together or more better said like learning together, which is like okay, now majority of it 80% is like a community and it just happens to be that maybe there is some pre-recorded program, but there is like some people, myself included, for example, with the community, where I'm pushing a bit more the limit just to feel how it goes. That is like, okay, let's actually put to the limit the learning together. And instead of like a recording curriculum, what we are going to do is like on a weekly basis have like accountability calls. So it's like you just join and share where are you up to, and you can connect with others that are there, share the experience, and potentially we can help each other because we relate to that stage. Then let's do workshops. So it's like either by myself or other members of the community. Let's teach each other some concepts that we are learning, and that way it's like we are not only learning together, but also like we are sharing resources, and that creates like that network effect and everything. And then obviously I feel like it's still like it works better when the community leader walks the talk, still as we obviously criticize of info product and also like traditional education. So it's still worth that the founder is going through that transformation and is taking the lead by example of showing where what he is doing, But it took me over 6 months. I started the community not too long ago, but still like it has been a learning curve. Like on the 15th of February, I recall. Um, and I already see where I spent at the beginning, like I overthought a lot, like, oh, I have to create the perfect curriculum and it's going to, I know that the community is the priority, but I have to create the perfect curriculum and the video course and everyone is because of me, so they want to see me and that to oh shit, no. What people actually want is to connect, to establish connections in this new space and be able to surround themselves with people that they can relate and have that feeling of belonging wherever the topic is and wherever the level, which is this is kind of like the lessons that I'm learning that you need also even need to split up the groups. So it's like not just like a massive group, it doesn't help anyone because it's like just throwing yourself into a massive stadium with a lot of people that maybe you are because of the same reason, but it's going to be impossible to connect. So small groups like traditional educations and big, separated by levels is what helps. And I feel like this is just like to connect the full circle. Like this is just human nature in itself, even from a biological standpoint. We have learned through iterations and we have learned through learning and sharing the knowledge with others, so it just makes sense that we create these digital tribes now that we have this technology. So it's use ourselves being ourselves as we have been being since we are alive, but just adapting to the new technology and new mediums that we have nowadays.
Wow, that's really amazing. I love how you're really bridging that gap between the traditional and the the current online educational model. And it's so you are walking the talk, especially with the name of the community becoming self, just through your process of how you yourself as the founder had to learn and evolve. It's like you are becoming, and through that process the whole community is also becoming. um, I think what I want to ask you is this idea that people say entrepreneurship is a pretty lonely journey. It's a most many entrepreneurs are very isolated, and is there value to that? Because there's truth in it, and then the question is there value to that? And what are the downsides to having a community while being an entrepreneur? I think I remember, Y Combinator saying, like, don't go for meetups, continue to build. Don't don't waste your time going to this and going to that. Like what you have to do is just build, build, build. And I know you also recognize that there's a paradigm shift in the world of entrepreneurship. It's not the same, and things obviously evolve. But maybe there's something timeless there about the reason why um, there has to be a level of isolation and solitude in the entrepreneurial journey. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on that and what you are seeing so far from your community around that idea as well.
So I honestly, I like to go to the basics, and I really like psychology, and I also like anthropology, because it's the way to understand ourselves the same way as history. So I feel like eh, no one can deny that we are social animals, so by nature we are social, and at some point we are going to need to be in a collective. We really need to answer that call, that inner call of like a feeling of belonging and finding our groups. This is also why find that communities are way more like sustainable than infoproducts, because at the end of the day, like it's like if someone is teaching you photography, like the only difference between some other person like teaching you photography is that the style, the character. But even two people like teaching the same style of photography, they are going to compete. So this is why the infoproduct become this like athlete environment where everyone was competing with you, and like kind of like uh, putting to the extreme like the some industries or niches like the agency model or things like that. So what I like the most about communities is that it's super flexible, and that it's kind of like it's just like the only wrong to do is not to be you in that thing, or not to transmit that for yourself. And that's going to make it unique. But going to the point that I always like kind of divert, um, going to answering your point, like something that I realized, and this is because right now, for example, my community is pretty small. Like, first of all, like I set the limit to be 99 members, just because I guess like I have experience in larger communities, and it was kind of like, as I mentioned before, like it was kind of like it wasn't there. I didn't have like the feeling of belonging. I was part of that group, but not kind of connection and relationship, because it was super difficult to be made. So, and also this is once again because of human psychology, which is like we are not good with large numbers. We can't imagine like what potentially like 100 uh, group, 100 people group, like we can think of that, but we have to attach that to a reference. So for example, it's like, okay, in a bus there could be like 50 people, so it's two buses. Okay, in a stadium there could be 300,000 people, but still that stage it doesn't work well. So it happens the same when you arrive to a community. If there are like 30 people to meet, it's like, okay, great, it's manageable, I can actually start to connect and do that. But if it's 1,000, it's like close to impossible. So for that reason, like I decided early on and copying the good part of the traditional model of let's make a small groups. And this to put into concept, right now there are like 30 members in the community, so it's pretty small group. I was able to obviously like met all the members like when they onboarded, and also through the time like have like some touch points and keep knowing the evolution, and I have like direct feedback. So I started to identify that even though the kind of narrative or the light that attracts people was like, okay, let's build together. I know it's a pretty abstract concept, but the people that get it, that is like that drive for creating and that drive for just like building things. So I know that there could be other communities more specific, like this is a graphic design community, or this is for music, or this is for agencies, or this is for that, and that's super great because like just put things into more simple. But it's like could be also stages or like natures of people. That's kind of my nature of like the building. There's a ever growing process. No, you are always becoming someone else, and this is kind of the connection with the name and everything. But once again, going to the point. To me, when I was kind of connecting and interviewing people and like asking like how they are doing, I started to realize kind of like a pattern that there were kind of like three profiles. And this is why I really, really embrace the concept of like the evolution, the transformation, the becoming stage where it's not that you are this person right now. It's like that you are this person becoming this one, you know? So we are not targeting like this person is like this, we are targeting like people transforming, people becoming, you know. So I noticed that I wasn't looking for like, it's kind of like, to put an easy example, if you are looking for unemployed people, like you are looking for people that doesn't have a job, that's a pretty binary way of thinking. But this approach is kind of more like aspiring, and there is like a whole science around this that is kind of like, okay, things are not things, things are things becoming, and the energy is ever creating and transforming, you know? So this is the same approach I use for the community. It's like, I want to find people that they are going from a stage to point B to point A from point A to point B, sorry. So it was like, I was attracting that builders, and I started to recognize that there are some people that are creatives in an early stage, that early stage they just want to kind of like connect, figure it out. What's this? I have an inner calling for this, but what's that about? You know, I want to connect with other people similar. Let's discuss, let's connect. Oh, we are the same in this aspect, or we are different in that one. And it's kind of like that exploration phase in the beginning. Then I realized that when people actually find their thing and find something to work on, they don't have a project yet, but they are working through that, or they don't have like a product, or they don't have like, but they are in this stage where they already have some clarity. It's not that they are wandering around, it's like they have some clarity that they want to build something, but they are in that stage, in that transformation that is like, okay, I need to arm myself with resources, with knowledge, and with the structure to go and build it and make it happen, you know? And finally, there is a final state that is like, you already build it, but it's like you have to maintain it. So you keep exploring and you can keep creating things. So this is kind of like an overview of the three stages, from I have an interest to having like an idea or clarity, from having that clarity and an idea of what to make to actually making it, and from making it to keep evolving or maintaining, so keep growing and developing yourself. And I was pretty inspired by the fact that in the same group there were the three kind of people, and I was like, why they are here? In a way, it's like, let's say that we understand the middle point, but I don't understand why there are the others. And it's because like, unlike traditional education, for example, like where it doesn't make sense to put someone that is in kindergarten, you know, with someone that is in the university, because there is no relationship to be made there. Like, it's not like symbiotic in a way. But when you are learning about a topic, obviously it's nice to have subgroups by levels, but it's also great that in the same group, like there are diversity around that, because probably the ones that are wondering and are starting and have no clarity could be inspired by the ones that have found the clarity and have made it, you know, and the ones that are building the product could be inspired by the ones who are already established, you know. So there is always like that drive to go higher, and that inspiration, and also backwards, you know, like it's like someone can teach someone else. Like if they are just one step further, they can be tough, you know. So I also discover, not discover, but found out kind of that it was like, oh, there is a huge feeling of like um kind of reciprocity, you know, like the people that has made it, it's like they are never going to judge someone that is starting out. This is something that is pretty different to our perspective, that is like, i I found out this quote that is like, a millionaire never is never going to criticize you for starting a business. Top athlete, you know, that has a world record is not ever going to criticize you for going for a run, you know. It's just that the people that are not making something that feel insecure, but the people that are doing that because they feel like attacked in a way. So I find out that everything ties down to psychology and everything ties down to answering calls that we have innerly. So when you don't have anything, you want to be part of that group that are making things just because of that feeling of belonging. When you are in the middle of the process, you want to feel accountable and you want to surround yourself with people so you keep doing it and you don't give up and you keep progressing to that. And the most fascinating ones, for the ones who already have, they want to give back because they empathize with the person that are starting out. So they want to save a bit of the pain of going through the process, which is not 100%. You have to walk your own walk, and you have to experience for yourself, but could save to have some awareness through some topics. And kind of
Hmm.
like that symbiotic model, I feel like it could apply to everything. Just imagine like I'm going to put the example of design because I really like that space and I understand a bit, but it's like imagine some teenager or someone in their 30s or whatever age is like that they are just kind of starting to explore design, as a whole. Let's put graphic design to be a bit more specific. And they are starting out on Figma. And it's like they have no idea. And they just have to learn like the basic concept, like negative space, color, combination, like just layouts and everything. And it's like obviously what they are need to learn is pretty fundamental, and for someone that is more advanced that's a given, but they can get on their own and explore their own to get the fundamentals. The key thing is to be inspired by the one that is already, they already have like, they already are learning, they are progressing, they have already published their own design work, whether that's a logo, that's a website, so that's aspirational. And maybe the next step that the ones who already know how to design and they just want to get better is for those ones that are already working at a design studio, or they are designers for Apple, or they have their own, as I mentioned, website design studio or things like that. So that combination of like inspiration is what drives everyone forwards, in my opinion, and what has driven us as a society for years. So once again, like this is pretty, this needed to happen. Like this is just ourselves like adapting to the new mediums that we have nowadays.
Yeah, that's really brilliant, I must say, and I love how much you're thinking about human psychology and evolution specifically as you're building this community. And yeah, I can really see how having people in different areas of their journey kind of commingle. It really infuses each entrepreneur in a different way. The person who's just starting out obviously can feel very inspired by the person who's kind of way ahead, maybe getting ready to start fundraising, and even vice versa. Like the person who's fundraising can really see like what it was like to start a project and to infuse themselves with that constant feeling of being a beginner. So I can see that there's a lot of value there in what you are doing, and I really appreciate it. I think this next part, it does lead to what you are doing, which is building in public. And I know you're
Mhm.
a big proponent of that. You've been writing about that as well, and on X, formerly Twitter, you've been sharing your day to day, what you've been doing. And I really appreciate that you're a big proponent of this philosophy. So maybe we can go into that as well, because that is what people on the becoming self community are also doing. They're sharing their whole process, so they're more or less building in public. What is the value to that, and what what is that line between private and public? Is there even a line there? Should there be a line? um yeah, that's my question for you.
I like it. I appreciate that question because there is a lot that we can expand on. So I'm going to answer quickly to the building in public philosophy because that's pretty natural and it's easy to explain. But the other question that you ask, like the thing of like when is you are saying too much, or like privacy or like all this kind of thing, I feel like we can elaborate more on that. So to start by the beginning, I really embrace the topic of like building in public because I feel like we all like final results. We all like the okay, and that's it, you know. But we are curious by nature, and we also have like an inner feeling of like I can do that. You know, this is pretty natural. Let's put an easy example, like with modern art. That is like when you see something quite simple in a way to get to that. It's like I could do that. I can throw some paint on a white canvas, you know. But it's like actually like the process is what takes you there, and kind of even the storytelling and the narrative. And I feel like in the past we have been just selling final products, and all the production and ideation and everything has been missed, you know. As once again, as we are curious by nature, our common question is like when you see someone like driving a Ferrari by the street, if you are not like just like, oh, he must be doing this bad thing or that bad thing, like the natural question is going to be like, I wonder what this person does for a living, because we want to know the process. We want to know how does this person, which is another human just like me, probably living in the same country, in the same city and everything, get to that result, you know. And I feel like that natural feeling has been overpowered with the internet, where it's not just our city or our day to day. Let's say, like we can see the day to day of a lot of people. And talking about day to days, this was also a massive hit a few years ago in YouTube, where daily blogs was a thing because we got curious, like what does it look like a day in the life of like a software engineer, of a this that, you know. So it's that combination of curious and selfish, you know, where it's kind of like we are curious about what's the process, and we are selfish in a way because we want to learn that and sort to do it on our own. Because it's like it's just not just because of learning things, which sometimes is the case, but most of the time it's like, how can I get to that point? You know? So as I mentioned, like for me, this is just basic human nature, basic psychology, and that's why this content thrive. And this content or this concept or this format has been thriving, and it just has been adapting to different models. Which, for example, is like in YouTube, it was a day in a live or a daily blogging or all this kind of thing. I have to say also, we are a bit noisy, you know, so we like to just get to know like the inside of people, what they are doing, like, what's the behind of the scene. Um, and going back to the point, for example, in Twitter, something that I'm doing, or X, I still struggle to adapt to the new naming. On X, something that I really like is that there was a nature of like the building in public movement, especially from indie entrepreneurs or indie developers that were developing software, but they were documenting the process because most of the time they were talking to other developers. So they were kind of like just being nerd, you know, and sharing like the insight, which usually like the final customer doesn't care sometimes, you know. So it's like, for example, like especially like when you are in a restaurant, sometimes you don't want to know what's going on in the kitchen, or when you see like a final product, a final meal, it's like you don't really want to know where that food come from, you know. But there are some other process that is like you really want to know, especially if you want to do it. I guess that if you are a chef, you actually want to know how this that a cooker prepared this meal. Okay, so this is where you go to the key. This is when you spark interest, when you connect with people that potentially they also want to get there. And this is where the human nature between uh, give to others and being selfish polarize a bit the scene. So if you want to really success at getting attention, you have to give to others that wants to get into your position. But at the same time, you don't want to have like a competitive approach, because it's like if you have that competitive approach, you are not going to give like the final answer or the full picture. You know, you always want to preserve a bit of it. So this is when I guess like people nowadays realize that the world is huge, and there is no scarcity in some ways, although it seems to be the narrative. So it's like, I don't mind. It's like, if you have a website design studio and I have another one, it's like we are not competing, because it's like, okay, we can serve like hundreds of different customers. Even you can be specialized in dentists and I can be specialized in restaurants, or whatever, so it's like there is a endless combination that makes you unique, and especially this linking to something that we talk about, especially if you answer to your true nature. So the way you are made and your interest is going to be different. So potentially some people with an expertise, same expertise on website design, but different background, could get to a different product. So if I have an expertise on website design, but when I was a child I was like pretty good at playing tennis, or I used to enjoy playing tennis, maybe I'm going to find like a way to design website for tennis coach or something like that, or tennis athletes. So when you truly reflect back on what you do, what do you enjoy and everything, you get to an unique answer. The problem is when we just try to copy, and you have to know what to copy and what not to. Copy a process so you can be a streamlined, but don't copy like the nature of it. That's why sometimes it feels that people is not giving the full answer, and especially this is also that I feel like it was missing from the info product space, where like, yeah, they were teaching you the business model wherever it was, like online e-commerce or fashion or whatever, or agency, but they weren't telling you why they discovered that. Potentially they were a person that was super huge or finds a lot of success in e-commerce, but it just happens to be that he or she has always been attached to that industry. And they, or in fashion for example, it's like, it's not the same. Just because someone has a lot of success in creating a fashion brand, it doesn't mean that now he or she has to share the blueprint and everyone has to fit that model. This is for everyone, anyone can do it. It's like, well, first ask you, why did you have that interest? What's your drive, to your motivation and your background? And that combination of the past is what made you successful. That maybe you have like an inner perspective in the industry, you have tried so many times, you enjoy it, and you want to give your own perspective. So someone that is only purely motivated, for example, for the money or by the money, is not going to find the same success, because it's not going to have the same refinement. And if you are giving the blueprint, or they are copying you in one way or the other, they are always going to be one step behind, because they don't have the secret formula, which is your reason to be there. Similar way to kind of Apple is like Steve Jobs really enjoyed like design, typography, and was a perfectionist. And it just happens to be that their product has to be that way. And it's not the same as, for example, it was Microsoft, who has like another principles.
Yeah, yeah. This is really an interesting conversation, and I really appreciate what you were saying earlier about how it's just human. Like we want to see what is going on. Like even like you mentioned YouTube, and how this whole like a day in the life, just vlogging, random things. Like even just women watching other women put on makeup. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
why is that so interesting? I was watching a video of a software engineer, and I'm not a software engineer, and I just found myself wanting to see her life and understanding like what is she doing, even though it's not something so interesting. It's just, but there was something there of wanting to just human to human, like seeing the aspects of another person's life, because I usually wouldn't be able to see that. So I do find that part of it very, very interesting. And I do really appreciate what you're saying. While you were talking, what came to mind was my, once I visited the computer history museum in Silicon Valley, and it kind of takes
Well,
you through the beginning of how uh, computers are made to like our current moment. And what I noticed was that over time, the hardware was being covered up. So all the little intricacies that we see from like way back when computers were being made was slowly being covered up. Now when we look at our laptop, we don't see all the wires and the hardware that's there. And so there is this devotion to minimalism, I do feel, in the world of tech, and that is more and more being amplified. And so do you feel, I mean, I think there's a profundity to building in public, but now this is kind of bringing that technological analogy to building in public. Does it complexify everything by just because you're opening it up, you're opening up the entrepreneur's world and like seeing what is happening, that layer which is covering all the wires is now being exposed.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my question. Can it create a bit of anxiety in others as well by seeing, because if we look at Alex Hormozy, who's really trending right now, and even his wife Layla Hormozy. I was just watching a YouTube video that they posted called The Hormozys. I think they really share their life as though they're the Kardashians, but from an entrepreneurial realm, and it was really nice to watch it. It was, Layla Hormozy was sharing about how when she has a bad day, what is her bad day like, how she reacts. She wanted to show that, it's okay to have these bad days and this is what it's like. And I want to create a consistency that I'm not just always this perfect person, but I have this side to myself. So I think that that's great. Um, so I don't know if this question is a valuable question.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
it is. And for me, it's just put people into two categories. And I usually not a huge fan of polarization, but in this case, I think it makes sense. So, for example, let's put two examples, technology and food. When we are going to the supermarket to buy some groceries, we just want simple things. Like we just want to pick an apple and that's it. I don't care where this apple is coming from in a way, you get me? Or what was the process like, or how much it took, or it's almost like we don't want to have like the farmer just telling us like, oh, it was this and that, and the winter was extremely harmful, and that kind of thing. It's like some people just want to pick that thing, and that's it, and that's the magic of evolution, that we came to a point that we don't have to go hunting, we have to go to the supermarket. It's just crazy. It still blows my mind when you think about it. Technology is kind of the same, where people use like our grandparents is using technology. Our grandparents, some of those like has like a phone, like an iPhone or something like that, which is crazy, like the evolution from where they started to now, or even myself included, like when we were kids, like the phones weren't that common. It was like it started to get going, but it wasn't like just a given like it's nowadays. So my point is that I feel like there are some people that just need to use it and don't care anymore. But there are people, the people that actually care because of whatever reason, they really actually want to know more. So that's the difference between someone going to a general supermarket or someone going to the farmer's market where the farmer is selling the thing, and maybe they want to listen the story, and maybe even the farmer is going to tell you like, honestly, pick those because they are going to taste so good, and maybe they tell you like, honestly, this are done, something like that, like that's honesty, that transparency, that's vulnerability, and some people appreciate that. And maybe it's not convenient because maybe you have to go there, pick your thing. It's not as convenient as going with the car to the supermarket. Maybe the food doesn't last that long, but some people are trading that convenience for what other values in another form or way. Like they feel better because they are buying local. They feel better because maybe for their body is better. So it's like it's just deciding if what's your trade-off. And this is not binary. Like some people are going to care about one thing deeply, another thing don't give a fuck. And it switch. So putting another example of technology, I honestly think like the success of Apple, as you mentioned, is the minimalistic approach and the simplicity, especially if we compare to IBM, Microsoft, or Android, you know. And why is that? Because actually the funny thing is that Apple makes technology products for non-technological users, you know, because it's just so simple to use that you don't even care. And maybe you are more limited, you know, maybe someone with a Mac, especially in like programming or things like that, maybe they can't do as much as they can do with Windows, you know, or with and the iPhone is way too simplistic, and maybe you can do crazier things or have it more customized with an Android. So it's like some people are just going to care about the simplicity of doing sending a file through AirDrop or just having a message or having that convenience that is like it feels like magic. I don't know what's going on. I don't care. It just works, and I'm just going to get annoyed if it doesn't work. So I'm just aiming for that. And the other end is like I just want to get techie, you know. I want that even for cars nowadays. It's like some people love that it's automatic, you know, and love that it's like just like even electric, and love that is like one day it's going to drive itself, you know. And there are some people that really like cars, and it's like I just love the smell of a gas, you know. I just like to feel like the this of like the when you push the throttle and this kind of things, you know. So I feel like honestly, the more you like something, you like it more raw, you know, and the less you like or the less you care, more better said, is like you just don't care, you know. You
Mhm.
just wanted the convenience of it, you know. So in that regards, circling back to the question in this specific, I feel like it's amazing that now we have more influence by people sharing their day as a software engineer, as an entrepreneur, as an influencer, as a whatever, because we can know the insight. It's like that's a person working on a software as a software engineer. Maybe they can be vulnerable. Maybe they can say, hey, I hate this job for this and that reason. And then you go to another one and it's, hey, I love this job for this and that reason. And then you compare the reasons and feel like, oh, I'm more like this or I'm more like that. So maybe it's great that you have that perspective, you know, that is like, oh shit, I'm like this person that hates that job. And we both like wanted to go there, but it's like, oh, she discovered that that wasn't the way to go. So it's like, I'm not going to repeat the process. Thanks for that awareness, you know. And could be the exact opposite. I remember when I was looking to study architecture, like there were more, a lot of people like, hey, this doesn't have many exit, or it's like you are going to spend nights awake you working on your project. And for me it's like I love that, you know. I love that. Or like you are going to spend a lot of time drawing or going from here or there. And it's like when you love the downside, it's kind of like that's the true core relationship. And this happens the same in social aspects, you know. It's like I feel like sometimes we just idealize like simplicity and we are more complex than it looks like. So it's like surfing black, like personal brands, these automatizations or these simplifications or going for the minimalistic approach is just like for people that don't care. You know, it's like even for example, this is like a bit controversial topic, but it's like just like the use of Tinder. It's like for people that actually just want something quick and doesn't care too much. Because if you truly, I mean, and it could be like a diverse range. It's like I don't judge. It's like there are people actually using Tinder, for example, to meet people and to socialize and potentially find a partner, you know, and there are other people that don't. So it's like it just depends on what you value. There are some people that maybe doesn't have any interest in Tinder just because it's like they just want things to happen. And if this has to happen by finding meeting someone because of friends, because of a work, because of a trip, or they are going to let it be, you know. So that's the difference between like just choosing like the easy route, the fastest route and the shortcut, or the scenario route, you know, where you are going to take all the downsides, you know.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very interesting approach, and there's a lot of benefits to it. I can really see that. Yeah. Um, I think I want to shift to your second area of work, which is make my deck. So you're
Mhm.
helping pre-seed to Series A founders build their deck. And I've checked out the website and I've seen some of the decks that you've already helped create, and it looks really, really wonderful. So I think this is quite an interesting area because when the entrepreneur is creating a deck, it's like you're in philosophy mode, right? You're working with the concept and you're trying to put it out into words so that you can actually fundraise for that idea. Now, my question, maybe you can share a bit more about that process, but then the question here that I want to ask is, what changes after the entrepreneur pitches? Do you think that at some point in one's journey the philosopher has to die, or can there be a way in which the philosopreneur can really exist, the philosopher and the entrepreneur in that one person can continue to coexist, or does the philosopher who is embedded in the realm of ideas has to come to an end at some point? That's my question to you.
I love that question, and I have to say, like, on the one hand, like, I love the two words and the combination of it just makes it better. I love philosophy and I appreciate philosophers, and I love entrepreneurship and I appreciate entrepreneurs, and I relate a lot to both. But at the same time, if there is something that philosophers are known and also sometimes entrepreneurs, is that the a philosopher sometimes spends too much time thinking about it, giving like thoughts and turns and turns and turns, and not actually maybe executing or putting into practice. It's like the whole thing that they are developing is like theory. And it's great, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's great because we need different people in society, and there are some people that are better at that stage, better at just thinking about things. And there are some people that couldn't stop for a second, reflect or observe, and there are others that thrive on that stage. So that's with philosophers. For entrepreneurs, it's kind of the same. It's kind of philosophy applied to starting or building business, where it's like they just like the idea, they just like to obsess about a problem, how they can fix it, bring a product, a solution to the market, how to position. And it's like this is where we arrive to concepts like serial entrepreneur and like many combinations that we can. For me, the problem is when you take that to a extreme, as most of the cases. And it's like if you take your whole life as a philosopher, which is like nowadays is kind of difficult, because the world is moving pretty fast. And it's great that you spend time reflecting, but it's also great to combine it with some execution or putting into motion. The same goes to entrepreneurship. It's like it's great that you like the early stage and that you obsess about a problem, but you can't fall in love. You have to trade it. You have to go to the next thing. And on the other polar opposite is like you can't fall of love, or you can't get tired of something too quickly, because it's like things takes time and you have to strive to keep going when things get hard, or not like just works at the first time. Like iteration is a big part of the game. So I guess kind of my role is like to kind of pop the bubble, especially obviously working with entrepreneurs. And it's like kind of like, okay, it's great. It's great that you find out this problem, but it's like let's figure it out is if it's worth pursuing. And sometimes like it, I try to take a step back, and it's kind of I'm not the market, neither I'm the founder. Okay, so I deeply care about the founders, and I deeply fall in love with every project that I work, and I try to project that into design because my main mission is kind of to be like a catalyzer, like kind of like to channel all that energy and amplify it, way more, so the market can pay attention, especially investors, through a simple PDF. So in that role, it's like I have like two kind of ways. with the founders, what I'm trying to work is like to kind of like, okay, let's bring your raw idea to earth, you know, let's put it into motion and let's ask ourselves questions that maybe we don't want to ask, you know. Let's truly question if there is like a demand for this. Let's truly ask if there is any other competitor doing this. You know, let's truly ask if there is a market or is the right timing. Let's truly ask all these kind of things, because linked to what you asked previously is like sometimes when we pull back the curtains, it's not as pretty, you know. And I see so many entrepreneurs that live on that like fairy tale stage that is like just like having ideas of how to solve the problem but not executing them, you know. And you are going to face a lot of projects that doesn't work, and the best founders are not the ones that just they are 16, 18 in their university bedroom or their parents' house bedroom, and they just came to a product and it just succeed. You know, like the Mark Zuckerberg. It's like the story is not truly like that. The true story is like you start so many things that doesn't work out and you keep iterating to different things because what you are mastering is the process, not that. It's like the same thing to I don't have any idea. I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't know what to do. It's kind of like saying like, oh, the world is perfect. There is no problems. I can't find anyone without problems. And it's like, just get out there, find someone with a problem, ask them a bunch of questions and figure it out how you can solve. If you truly love entrepreneurship, it's like I find that you get to 2 points. Either you like to solve problems and you are going to do that for life, or you just find out a problem that was you were experiencing and is so deeply painful that you needed to solve it. And that's why I call it like entrepreneurs on a mission, that is like they never consider to be an entrepreneur, but they have to because no one was going to solve that, you know. So if you are like a native or natural entrepreneur, which is like I don't care about what, I just love to solve problems, it's like you have to get way better at the process, you know, at the framework, at just like really empathizing with the problem and with the user that solves the problem. And this is quite different to what we have seen, especially linking with the info products, you know, that is kind of like they were just people looking at YouTube, mostly teenagers or people in their 20s, like use how can I make 10K amount the fastest ways possible. And that's honestly, I'm sorry to say, that's not true entrepreneurship, because that's only kind of building your own job in a way, which is great. But you are going to find out that in the same way that just looking for what's the highest paying career, you know, just what's the fastest business to make as an entrepreneur is not the solution. The solution is to obsess about the problem, you know. And once you obsess about the problem and you solve it, you are going to see of like, oh, this tastes great. I'm going to go into new ventures and keep going, you know. Or that was your whole mission. For example, like once again, like Steve Jobs, you know, which he did other things, but his true love was Apple, you know. So, so yeah, to circle back and to answer kind of like the full question, to me, like my role is more like to ask all that hard questions so the founder could be better, more ready to when the investor actually is not going to give him a second chance, like he's going to ask all that questions right. And what we try to do is to anticipate to that questions by answering them in the deck, you know. So when the founder doesn't have to think about how big is the problem or the market or that kind of thing, because he's all explaining in the deck, that's when it's successful, you know. Because usually, and I always tell the founders, and this is through experience as anything in life, I didn't know about it, you know. For example, for myself it was kind of similar, where is, as I mentioned, like I had like some interest in entrepreneurship, but I didn't even know what it was. You know, I was just facing that thing, and I realized from since I was like a child, it's like I always liked it to fix things, solve problems, like ask about questions, you know, that curiosity. What will happen if this problem didn't exist? What can we do about it? What, you know, all these whys and whats and hows, you know, is what truly kind of makes an entrepreneur. So for me, the key thing, the key advice I always give in the community and to the founders is like, give yourself time to explore, to discover, and to be grown. To don't marry your first stage. Just iterate as much as possible, and I call that like the learning over earning stage, where you don't try to make a massive hit, build a unicorn, or get rich. You are just trying to explore and get like a full round. What I call is like, okay, let's put something in the market, because I also see so many founders just stuck into perfecting the product without ever getting feedback. But this is why, like the built-in public philosophy, just remove that thing, because every time that you spend not sharing something, you are building a defense into insecurity. So it's like, if you are just sharing the first line when everything sucks and everything looks ugly, it's like, hey, I assume I accept that this is shit, but I just want to get better. So I don't fear like bad feedback. I know already that it's shit, but any kind of good direction, it can help me massively in the future. So I feel like that's why, for me, building in public and why I'm doing it is just to show as an example that is a great exercise for yourself. It doesn't have any other magic. It just helps you just to funnel and channel all that energy and all those thoughts, especially for me. But on the other side, you are getting used to share raw process, to sell the thing. It's like the transformation, as you mentioned. It's like, it's not just sharing like when the influencers is all with the makeup and the hair and all dressed up. It's like sharing the day to day. Because if not, we build a society that is like just too idealistic. Like, oh, I can build a business to 10K a month in 2 months or 2 weeks or in 24 hours. Or, okay, all the girls or boys that I met has to be like top model. That's my standard, and that's not realistic. Not even the top models, are like that every single day. So that's kind of like, I feel like, just this whole narrative of building in public and just revealing and everything, and just being a bit vulnerable and sharing the process, it helps on a massive scale, just to accept that there is process, that there is rawness, that is not everything perfect. We still strive for that, but it's not there instantly.
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that emphasis on process, and I think that's why the philosopher doesn't have to die, because the entrepreneur has to move forward, and it has to be somewhat ahead of the philosopher in order to bring those products out into the market and to get into that process of iteration. But what I love about what you're doing in terms of building in public, and especially because you write on LinkedIn and on X, you're actually giving yourself a chance as an entrepreneur to deeply reflect, which is bringing in that philosopher as well. So in many ways, you are living the life of a philosopreneur, and I really truly believe that more and more entrepreneurs should be doing the same. Some of my favorite entrepreneurs are philosopreneurs, like Naval and Paul Graham from YC, because they write a lot and they're really like looking into that world of entrepreneurship and excavating these concepts and ideas that are going to be helpful and very timeless pieces for future entrepreneurs to work with. So I want to ask then, is writing online, is that part of your building in public process, or is there also another layer to it?
So, for example, I feel like maybe it's not everyone, okay, but in my case, like I have usually a lot going on in my head. So it's kind of natural that I always have close to myself like a notebook, where I can just sketch some thoughts, where I can type some notes. And I feel like that's for me just kind of brain dumping when I have like that soaking energy of like an idea, that is like a lightning. It's kind of, I have to put it somewhere. it has to touch down somewhere, and the earth way, following with this metaphor of the weather, is like, for me, then like journaling is like raining, where if you hold on onto the rain too much, onto rain dumping your thoughts and how do you feel and everything, and you get a bit wet, which is you get a bit vulnerable and reflective and everything, it's like it's not sustainable. You can always be holding because everything gets dried and you almost get no emotions or no traction or no feedback of how you are feeling. So I feel like nowadays, in the same way that to put input into our brain is through books, through podcasts, so information coming in, I feel like to get out, to produce things, like we have to get information out. Okay, so that's through, as I mentioned, like sketching like an idea or like just reflecting. I've been always like a huge, I always like the hybrid approach. I try to be as hybrid as possible, where I don't get too biased about one way or the other. So when people ask like, but digital journaling or physical journaling, I always say both, it's like it's whatever I have at my reach. So, for example, I find out like for me, for some reason, it's like digital sketching ideas, it doesn't work because it's too slow with the trackpad, with the mouse, or even with a iPad. It's like I don't feel it. I just need like a notebook. But for example, it happens the other way. Like I try to write my thoughts as a journal, and for me, it's kind of limiting because I sometimes, while I'm writing, like I'm reflecting and I'm deleting some things, going back, editing, because what I want is just like a piece, of like a text or something that I could reflect. Even sometimes for example, in X, what I do is like a daily journal. I did that on the past, and I do by seasons, so I took like 90 days of journaling, and it's like, okay, 90 days is a lot of days. It's like 3 months, but I don't do that, or I don't have the need to do that the whole year, which is something hybrid approach. It's not yes or no, this or that. It's kind of like, I just feel like there are seasons that I build in, and I have to document the process because it helps me to close the day and sleep better at night because I bring up what I did and I can feel better about what I did. I also always say like what I'm grateful for because I feel like it's super important. This is something that I removed from my vocabulary a while ago, that is like I no longer, and for a long time I've been practicing this, I no longer strive to be happy. My goal in life is not to be happy. My goal in life is to keep building, honestly, but to be grateful. So it's kind of like that, assuming that I'm never going to be satisfied. I'm always going to want more things, go bigger, go faster, go farther, But at the same time, I want to do that with gratefulness. Because if you don't do that from a point of like, I want to go farther, but I'm satisfied with this, or I appreciate this, but I'm curious about the following, you are going to be in a bad place where it's like nothing fulfills you, and that's just going to take you down with your whole circle. So honestly, this didn't came because I'm a genius or whatever. This came through experience, and realizing that, yeah, your whole society tells you like be happy and everything, and it's like sometimes you have to be sad, sometimes you have to feel unproductive, sometimes you have to feel 100 different ways. So that's why I love so much journaling. But for me, something that you have to always be is grateful. I don't find that there is a moment that you can't be grateful, because the good part is that you can be grateful when things are going good, and you can be grateful when things are going bad, because that puts you in perspective. You are never at zero. You always have built something, and this perspective I feel is super important when you are building whatever. It's not even entrepreneurship, it's just your life. It's like, just because you have a bad day, it doesn't mean that you are going to kill yourself. It could be crazy, so even on a bad day that everything was awful, this kind of, oh, but I'm grateful because of whatever. And finally, the final point why personally I enjoy more like the digital journal is because I can add pictures. Because nowadays, for example, we have like our phone always at reach, and for example, I'm someone that I like to capture moments of the day. And I said this recently, like I feel like I romanticize life a lot because it's like I maybe I'm taking a coffee and it's like I try to pick the phone and take the perfect picture, and what this sometimes is feels like, oh, I'm just like pretending or whatever. It's just like I like, it's my moment of appreciating what I'm doing. It's like, oh, this looks so beautiful. So maybe it's myself that I appreciate the aesthetics and the visual aspect. But it's kind of like it helps me a lot to, take 2, 3, 4 snapshots of the day and put that there. So yeah, it's funny how Twitter, I think I feel unwanted without wanting this, became the best journaling app that is there, because I also experienced that just doing in public, which is the topic that we have seen. Like, yeah, obviously I could journal that in my private notes or using physical notebooks, but maybe it depends of the person. But I feel like there are piece of wisdoms or lessons to be learned in the day-to-day insights. So it's kind of like just not only myself, like I always send my tweets of journaling, like with, are you journaling with me or are you going to do this with me? Because it's like inviting some other people to do that also. But it's kind of like you can get an insight or you can get a bit of hope. Maybe you have been going through a rough day, and just reading someone else like good day or bad day, like just put you in a different perspective. So that's why I feel like setting, like setting the day and setting the downs, and also like as I mentioned with the whole thing, like just putting a bit of more realistic approach to this. I love it at the beginning when I saw some early entrepreneurs documenting their journey on YouTube, which is something that I would like to get more used to, to do more of that. But I love when they say like, hey, I'm trying to do a blog, but quite honestly, like my days are pretty repetitive. I just stare at the screen for 12 hours and that's about it. And I love it, obviously. And I also enjoy when I'm going in crazy vacations, and obviously that's easy to share and document. But just know that that's possible because I'm here 12 hours a day, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. I really have been appreciating your posts, and you've really actually been inspiring me to do the same. Because my co-founder and I have been talking about starting a YouTube channel for our company as well, and I mean, we keep discussing because some parts of what we're doing is very proprietary, and we don't want to just. That's like the question that I was really getting at about, and we touched on it, the private and the public, but I think it's something new, and it would be interesting to just show the world like this is how you kind of build a history engine, and this is
Yeah,
this is like part of what we're trying to do, which is create a paradigm shift in human consciousness. So I think there's value to that. I mean, at the end of the day, like just being transparent and making it fun, for other people
absolutely.
to see. Yeah. So it sounds like you are a philosopreneur. And that's why I called you on this podcast, because I really feel like you embody that. So what can you just share with us? What is your, what do your days look like as a philosopreneur? What, from the morning to the evening, what is it like?
Absolutely. Well, just before going into the day to day, I just because of what you mentioned, I feel it's super valuable. And just to give a bit of insight, like first, I would love to see the journey. I would love. I encourage you guys to document the process, not only for other people, but especially for yourself. This is when giving becomes selfish. Like there is like a relationship there that you are being selfish, but at the same time you are giving. So in this regard, like definitely you can inspire a lot of people, and also like you can help yourself like by documenting, creating like a engagement with people, like feeling part of the process, not just the final product and everything. But at the same time, for me, the biggest reward is going to be in a few years' time when you guys have accomplished so much and you look back and it's like, wow, you remember this office, or you remember that day that we struggled so much, and all that stories that we forget about it. That's something that I really like about YouTube compared to, for example, X, because it's like I post today and tomorrow is forgotten and there is no way back. But YouTube has that beautiful gallery view that you can scroll back, see even the algorithms like you pick things back, and it's like you are really creating something that is compounding, because for example, on X, like today you post, tomorrow you don't, and for 100 days you don't post on X, and it's like you're forgotten. Your followers start dropping out, you are forgotten literally. But on YouTube, it happens that it's like even old videos keep having value and recording and everything. So it's something that I have missed for a long time because especially in the early days of the startup, I was thinking, I was seeing people, they come up, and I was like, shit, I have to document my process. But at the same time, I was like, my day is so repetitive. I don't know why, which I want to jump more on this. Um, but I don't regret because I feel like everyone's journey start at some point. So it has a lot of benefits, like the trust on your persona and the reciprocity and the reputation is going to go through the roof. You are going to prove that you've been in the trenches, okay? And this is also helpful if you have a community or things like that. But I feel like especially for brands nowadays, like the CEO has to be at the front. It's like before, like the CEO was hiding, behind the team, behind the production team, behind paid actors that reply like the nowadays, like the CEO has to embrace the brand has to be the first one wearing the brand in whatever way, shape, or form. So I feel like nowadays is more than necessary that six sense, like six a new layer, to a brand that is like, okay, who is behind what they are doing and everything. Going back, like I'm really considering documenting more my days and my journey. I still struggle because I really want to still make an impact, and I feel like over time being limited, our energy is the thing more limited. So we have to channel in the energy and have a balance between documenting the process but also being present in enjoying it. And I feel like I have seen the stories because at this point, like we have had YouTube and bloggers for a long time. And I have seen many YouTubers and bloggers that I have followed for a long time, and they reflect back and it's like, whoa, at the time, I feel like I was mm, missing out by being more focused on recording than on that, but it was kind of an investment because now from that day we have like a video of 10 minutes of summary of 24 hours. But I remember that day I can revive that, and I feel like that's magic, that we are going to definitely forget, but the pictures, the video is going to stick, as long as we still have technology. And I feel like that's truly an investment. Yeah, and it's honestly nowadays I feel like the best marketing tool that we have at our reach. Which go down to what my day looks like, and hopefully I can start documenting more of the process. But it's a problem in some way, not like a problem, but it's like this looks pretty alike. It's like I am, for example, used to give something contrary to the common belief. It's like I don't wake up at 5 a.m., I don't take cool showers, and this kind of narrative I have tried in the past. But nowadays, like I realize that everything goes by seasons. So my whole year is divided in seasons where I have some seasons that I'm more easygoing, and I just like take a step back and just try to preserve my energy and focus on what's the one thing that I have to do in the day. And there are some other seasons that is like it's just everything is going to get busier. So I just have to be at my peak, and put more hours because it's really going to make the impact. And that's when routines, schedules, even alarms came to place. But as a general thing, I tend to be more like a night owl than an early bird. So I wake up quite honestly at 9 a.m. most of the times, sometimes earlier, 8, but to be quite honestly, usually it's 9. What I prioritize is going for a walk. I realize that it helps with my sleep, just even in a cloudy day, just to get out of the house and just have some fresh air, it's kind of to start the day, start moving, start let the blood flow in. If it's a sunny day, like get some sunlight and everything to regulate your circadian rhythm. And then I used to not have breakfast. Now I do just go with the flow, not with fasting or whatever. Just like go with the flow. Um, and then I get to work. And this is the key. I don't overcomplicate my morning routine. I don't do 100 different things. I just do the less things that has a huge impact, just like taking a walk and maybe having breakfast. And if not, I don't, but it's like drinking water and going for a walk is the key morning routine that has the bigger impact, because if not, I'm going to spend the whole day working, and if I don't get out, like I'm going to feel like it was just another day. So I most of the times just work through the morning, and as I work with people from Europe, but mostly also from United States and Canada and everything, I it's beneficial for me because as I'm not an early bird, I can take the morning to take it slow, to do some tasks, create content, and some light work. And for example, at midday is when my peak starts, so I have lunch around 12 or something, go to the gym, and maybe at 2 is when I start to pick up. And from 3, 4 p.m. till 7, 8 p.m., I have calls, whether that's from the community or from people with founders from the studio. Um, and that's pretty much about it. I try to take another walk, and just go down, wind down, hopefully see the sunset and everything. And just I prioritize a lot, like a good night of sleep. I suck at not sleeping enough. So if I don't sleep, it's like I'm not a person. So I'm sorry. I try to be the most awake when I'm awake, but when when I'm tired, I just really need to put those hours. So I'm not the kind of person that could go through the day for a whole week or a whole life with 5 to 6 hours of sleep. I really need to put like 8, 9.
Wow, nice. I love the way that you work, and I really appreciate that you see yourself as living in seasons. I know that recently this year more and more people are like, okay, you don't need a full morning routine, and I was one of those people during COVID where I was like, okay, this has to be done before
Same.
I can get to my work. And more people are realizing that actually that's kind of postponing the real thing that you have to do. So I think it's awesome that we're realizing we don't really have to be rigid, and perhaps that time will come again when we all feel the need to, okay, I need to journal, I need to work out, I need to meditate, I need to do this before I get to my work. So it's awesome that you've recognized that, and that you yourself are living in different seasons throughout the year. There's a
Yeah.
time, there's a time for everything.
Especially, like, for example, I see that like as almost like tools, like there is the tool of cold shower, there is the tool of waking up early, there is the tool of fasting. I see that as tools that you can use because, for example, like as you mentioned, there are periods of my life that I've been super strict and I have been like wearing the same clothes every day, doing the same routine, waking up at the same time. And there are some other times that I'm letting go. And here are 2 points that I wanted to make. Like the first thing is that as I progressively step down from the life of normal people, of like going to university or having a 9 to 5, to start working for a startup, to start working on my own, to start having my own studio, to build my own schedule. So it's like just some progression where obviously I was at school, like the school started at 9 and ended at 5, and I had to do that. And if you don't go at time, you're going to get punished. When I went to university, it's like, okay, it's not 9 to 5 every day. It's like there are different classes at different times. So you just have to be at that time, at that place. And then when I started with the startup, it became like a 24/7, quite honestly. So I was like, obviously I could be remote and all that kind of thing, but it was a 24/7. And now slowly I've been like kind of imposing more like what my body feels like or needs to by experimentation, and it's like you have to build the routine that works for your own, as we talk at the beginning of the podcast, which is like, hey, there are some people that can wake up at 4 a.m. bright and sharp, and at 7 a.m. at 7 p.m. they are tired, and at 8 they could be sleeping. And there are some people that are the opposite. So let's embrace what we are, not what we have to because someone said to. And the second thing is like, try everything for a stage for a period of time, because it's going to be worth it. First, because of the experience, and second, because it's like you are going to figure it out if it's give us to your life, or it only add stress, or rigidness or everything. So for a period of time, I was waking up at 5 a.m. first because I wanted to remove from my vocabulary like I'm a night owl, I can wake up early, and I just remove it by practicing, and I understand the people that wake up at that time, because it's like everything is quiet. You get things done. You feel that you are ahead of people. Um, I find that peace at 2 a.m. because it's the same quietness, but late. So it's kind of, I'm giving the stromal and everything. So, and cold showers, like I took that for a long time. And the cool thing is that I used to be like, when I went to the sea or to a pool, like I was always super cold, like pretty quickly. I couldn't be on the water. And after having like a season of taking cool showers regularly on a daily basis, like now I can stand way more the cold water in a pool or in the sea. And that has made me better. So it's kind of also like take the stage and just know that you can do that anytime, but you don't have to.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that because I'm in that a similar period where I used to wake up at 5 a.m. And this is like since moving to New York, it just hasn't been the same. In California, I was waking up early, meditating, going to the gym, and getting all of those morning things done. But since moving here, it's completely gone. And I don't know, I'm more of a night owl now as well. Like I don't sleep on time. And I keep getting mad at myself, like, you have to sleep on time and you have to wake up on time, but it's just not happening. And so I'm trying to just let go and just give in to the reality because I am working later now. It's just, it's a city that never sleeps, so that energy is just alive at night. And there's a lot of events, entrepreneurship events to go to in the evening, and networking. And so in Santa Cruz in California, that was not the case. So I'm coming to realize it's just a different environment, and it's okay. I'm forcing myself to be a Californian in New York, but that's just not
Yeah.
happening. And then there's this idea of perfection, which is that, oh, you're not living a perfect life because you're not waking up at 5 a.m. So then I'm all that energy that can be put into my work is now instead I'm getting mad at myself because I'm not
Yeah.
living up to the past. So it's very interesting, all these things that come in the way of just being here right now and doing what
Yeah.
needs to be done.
I love what you mentioned, because I realized in the past couple of years how much of an influence it plays your space, your space, literally, like your space in terms of like your room, your house, or your office and everything, but also like the city that you live in, country that you live in, or the part of the world that you're at. And I realized that. mm, the people that are at a level of freedom or success or whatever, that they can literally be wherever they want, whenever they want, and all this kind of freedom, they just move to different parts of the world accordingly to the season. So maybe they want to skip the winter, and it's like they just move to a part of the world that it doesn't have winter. So when everyone is struggling because it gets cold, it's windy, it's that, they are just in a part of the world that they can get sun, they can get tan, they can get exercise and that kind of thing. And even what you mentioned, because United States is beautiful in that way, that is so polar opposite in the different coasts. And I had the pleasure to be in United States for the first time like a few months ago, and I was in New York, and I realized that it was like, yeah, the city that never sleep, but not really, because the first day that I arrived, I had such a jet lag that I was like at 5 a.m. like rise and shine. And I went out to explore the city, and I was expecting like hecticness and everything, and it was like empty. I was walking through New York and it was empty, and I was like the city that never sleeps, my nuts, you know. And it was like, no, it's not the case, but it's what you mentioned. For example, Madrid, where I'm at, is like kind of the same. Like, um, there is nothing going on if you wake up earlier, so it's kind of, you almost feel like you are against the thing, and sometimes it's cool to do that, but most of the times it's like, are you going to miss a networking event, or use a dinner with friends, or use a afternoon coffee, um, just because you have to be in bed like at 7 p.m.? It sometimes doesn't work like that, you know. It's like, and it's the opposite, you know. It's like, as you mentioned, like some other parts of the world, it's like start to slow down earlier. For example, like one of the cities that I love the most, that I hopefully live at some point of my life or for some periods or something, is Copenhagen. I've been there a few times, and I love that is far way more in the north, you know. So at 4 p.m. in the winter, like it just get dark, you know, so there is no light. So people start going home, but it's not that at 4 p.m. they go home and they just go to bed. It's like they discover that there are like 4 or 5 hours until going to bed, that they can do things, you know. So where in Spain, for example, I might have the FOMO of like not being outside with the good weather and everything. There is like, it's pitch black, it's night, so I can be at home, you know. So there are combinations that I realize, and I feel like you live the huge contrast where it's like, just find your place where what you want to do at that specific moment, it works for you, and as you mentioned, try to adapt to the place, or move completely. It's either you fit in or get out, you know, because now we have the possibilities.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think this is the tension that the philosopreneur has to hold. You know, there's like a philosophy of life, a way of life to live, like have the cold showers, be a stoic in the morning. But the entrepreneur, it's like whatever is happening, because things will just come up. You have to be able to adapt in that moment, whether or not you had your cold shower. You know, so I think that's
Literally.
that's that's a bit of the tension that one has to hold, which is that it's nice to have a way of life. You know, I mean, we like to hear about these entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs. He was a fruitarian, and he, whatever else he was doing, it's like it kind of adds to that idiosyncrasy of the person, like the way in which they live life. But then you can't let your idea of life get in the way of the action that has to be taken in that moment. So I think this
Absolutely.
is, yeah, this is the very interesting tension that the philosopher has to hold.
I
So yeah.
feel, yeah, I feel, just to add a quick note onto that, is, if you think about it, now practicing the philosopher entrepreneur, if you think about it, it's like, the reality is that the thing that works is not exciting, you know, it's regular day to days. It's like, but what catch our attention is the polar opposite, the extreme, the I'm a fruitarian, you know, I'm a vegan, or I'm wake up at 3 a.m., you know, or I just work in the night and I sleep in the day. It's just the polar opposite that is like nice as a title of a story, you know, but it's not the reality. In some way, if you know what I mean, is not what is going to work for the majority, or it's not probably what's going to work for you, or it's not what that person is doing all the time, you know, and it's not sustainable. And I think, like, who knows, like, with that kind of extreme diet, like, they tend to lack something, you know. And it's kind of like, even going on to discuss like what's the best city in the world, or what's the best place to be in the world. It's like, as I meant to, like, maybe the best place to be in the world is like different parts, different places, through different times, you know. What's the best diet is like, well, maybe it's not the same in winter that in summer, you know. What's the best time to wake up, you know. So there are all these kind of things that it just doesn't make sense. We try to imply that rigidness because it's easier. It's like personal brands, like, I'm the email marketing guy, because it's easier to explain and people love that. But the reality is that it's not sustainable in the long term, because we are not just like that. It's like everything is both. It's like there are winters, there are summers, there are that, and in the winter the sun rises at this time, and in the summer it's at this time, you know. So why not adapt? It's like nature is telling us that everything is flexible and everything adapts and everything is evolving, even though everything circles back. So why don't we learn a bit more of that and not trying to apply like a rigid, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I really, really, really love that. It's so true. I love that you're bringing in the seasons again and this idea of evolution. That yeah, we shouldn't. It's life is not just stagnant in that way. It's really fluctuating and things keep coming at us. So we have to be kind of holistic in that manner to be able to deal with whatever comes our way while also occasionally having that very stoic approach to life. So thank you. Honestly, Adrian, this was a very, very interesting conversation. I had so much fun with you. So thank you so much for coming on the Philosopreneur podcast.
I appreciate it. I have had such a great time, and I knew that it was going to be a great conversation. I hope that people got value from it. And yeah, I love what you're doing. I really hope that you start documenting your process because I'm going to be your number one fan. uh, and yeah, let's keep building together.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you all for listening. And maybe, Adrian, you can just share with people some of the links that you'd want to share so that they can find you and whatever you're building.
Well, I think like the best link to find myself is adrianbarra.com. I think like that's going to be hard to type, because of my surname, but also make my deck.studio or thebecomingself.com. Whatever finds your way.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Adrian. And I'll see you soon again.